Hi, this is a re-recording for the 2020 Coordinated Call for Projects Fleet Replacement webinar. Unfortunately, in the previous meeting, I was unable to record the webinar due to technical issues, so I'm re-recording it now. Again, if you are a rural transit provider, this webinar is not going to be for you. TxDOT was recently awarded the 5339B Coordinated Discretionary Award Fund, so we will work with rural transit providers at a later date for their transit needs. If you are an urban transit provider, please stay on the line because you are part of this particular call. Again, rural transit agency, you wouldn't be part of this call. Urban transit agency, please stay on the line. So, again, if you have any questions, please email us at ptn_programmgmt@txdot.gov. So, we're going to go over the agenda real fast, the webinar purpose, important points, coordinated call, fleet replacement, program description, eligibility, application guide, contribution explanation, application information, application tips, submission timeline, formal question submission, and guidelines. So, this is the webinar purpose. It's the Fleet Replacement 2020 Coordinated Call, Fleet Replacement Summary. We're going to summarize everything that is part of the coordinated call pertaining to the application process and to the fleet replacement. And we're going to go with fleet replacement instructions, and we're going to review important dates. So, important points. These coordinated calls for projects are distributed biannually. The next call for project will be published in fall of 2021. Projects can be for a maximum of 2 years starting in 2021 or 2022. And the master grant agreement and current FTA and TxDOT certification assurances must be on file. So important things to consider. Applications must be submitted through eGrants. And when we mean submitted through eGrants, the status of your application must be application submitted for review by February 14th, 2022 at 5 p.m. in order to be considered on time. Your questions must be answered thoroughly, and when you read the instructions, keep in mind that there are specific guidance in the instructions, and that'll be in the blue text. So please review the blue text before you answer any of the questions. And here are some important points to remember. Here are the entire layout of the instructions document. You probably are already familiar with this, but if you're not, Section 1 is the overview, Section 2 is terms and conditions, Section 3 is application submission, Section 4 is applications instructions, Section 5, this is where if you're not applying for all of the specific calls that are available, you would just choose the one that you're applying for and go into detail with that. For this particular webinar, we will only be discussing the fleet replacement aspect. We won't go into the other ones. And again, Section 6 is glossary, and then Section 7 is the attachments. So description. Basically, general description of what we're doing here. It's to assist rural and small urban transit districts with maintaining capital assets in a state of good repair. Again, rural is not going to be part of this. This will be part of the discretionary award. And so just a quick summary of to qualify, you have to contribute 50% of the total project cost from other funding sources. Those other funding sources can include 5307, 5311, 5339, state funds, and local funds. So eligible parties, again, this is just going to be urban now, and eligible project types that may be included. Remember, this is not a comprehensive list. Fleet replacement, fleet rehab, minor facility renovations, shop equipment, and other miscellaneous equipment, and then fleet maintenance hardware and/or software. Funding percentages, as I mentioned earlier, so you will have to contribute 50% of the funds. So if it's a $200,000 project, you would get $100,000 from the call, and then you would also get $100,000. Then you would have to contribute on your own. So that $100,000, your particular contribution can come from any of the funding sources I stated earlier: 5307, 5311, 5339, state funds, and local funds. Now, if the funding amount that you are requesting, if you're going to use local or state funds, keep in mind that more than likely you're not going to need TDCs depending on the level of contribution amount you're pulling from those particular sources. So we will work with you if that is going to be the case. So the general information application form, not different than what you've seen in other applications, 5339, 5311, what have you. So you're just going to basically the who, what, why, when, where, right? So you're going to describe the proposed projects, how the need demand was determined, anticipated benefits of the project, and then identify and describe methods of procuring goods. And that question is really only relevant if you already signed on to a co-op or you have an idea of where you're going to procure your vehicles, or, you know. So the vehicle and other capital projects form, this is where you're going to start to see a little bit of difference than what we have done previously. So specifically, the need for the project, that's going to be similar. You know how to answer that question. That's just going to be how was it selected, summarize the anticipated service improvements or project benefits to your area. And then number two, identify the specific vehicles to be replaced or rebuilt. Now this one's a little bit different than the previous one because now we're asking for the VIN number. Previously we didn't ask for the VIN number, but that makes reviewing the applications a little bit harder just because we want to verify that the vehicles that are being submitted for replacement, that they're not attached to any other discretionary award type situations like the previous coordinated call, Tiger, discretionary award, that it hasn't been earmarked already for disposition. So by that I mean if it's on another funding source for disposition, it cannot be attached here. You can't use the same vehicle twice to get additional funds. So identify the types of vehicles to be purchased. So that's just where you would go in there and you would say, hey, these are the ones I'm getting rid of, and I want to buy a type 1, type 2, type 3, describe which type it is, and make sure that the type matches up to attachment B, the life standards form that's at the bottom of the instruction document. And you should be good to go. So the biggest difference you're going to see this year is in vehicle and other capital projects form. For this particular one, you're going to see, in the previous coordinated call fund, it was a text box where you would just enter in your information. Well, this time we made it an Excel executable document. So again, right here, amount requested, contribution amount required. If you're requesting $200,000, you're requesting $100,000 from us, and you're also saying, I'm also going to come up with $100,000. So funding source. You would go through the 5 funding sources that we talked about earlier, remember, 39, 07, 11, state, local funds. You would add in the fiscal year, so if it's 5339, are you taking from 17, 18, 19, what have you, same with the other ones. And you would just write down the amount per source. So if you need $100,000 of contribution amount, where are you pulling it from? Whatever that combination is, you would enter it into the amount per source. Now, with this particular editable form, every time you hit save, you will get additional columns. So you're not limited to 3. I believe that is the preset form. So if you need additional funding source lines, just hit save and you'll get more. And also keep in mind, if you're using multiple funding years for a particular grant, say like 5339, you want to use 17, 18, and 19, what have you, you would want to put each one on a separate line item. Same with the other ones, because that amount per source, we need to be able to track that. Okay, they are contributing $50,000 and 10,000 of that is coming from FY 17, 18, 19. It just needs to be broken out so that we have an idea of where those funds are coming from. And also, I did not mention this earlier, but for 2 and 3, the specific vehicles to be replaced or rebuilt, and for the vehicles to be purchased, every time you hit save on that page and you have an entry in those particular fields, it'll auto-generate another tab. So just keep hitting save and you'll get more options. So you're not limited to what you see from the beginning. And here's just the longer-winded explanation of how to fill out the financials document that I just talked about. Other capital, we talked about this previously. very similar to what you would see on the vehicle side. Describe the specific elements of the other capital project in detail, describe the need for the project, identify the amount requested. So you would see another text box similar to what I just described on the vehicle side, which would be this one. So this would also be on the capital side. So you would just fill that out in the same way. And then provide the facility location if available. Please review the instructions for this one because we left instructions for a Google Maps landmark web page, if you can include that, just so we have a good idea of where it is. And then application tips. If you're replacing fleet, only vehicles that have exceeded their useful life according to bus testing standards Altoona are eligible for replacement. So whatever vehicle that you're submitting for replacement, please make sure it's exceeded in mileage and or age. Otherwise, we would request something else be substituted in its place. Lower thresholds will be considered for vehicle rehabilitation projects. So the engine went out, transmission went out, it's still in overall good shape. Maybe it hasn't hit its life threshold, you know, like if it's a type 3 and we're talking 5 years, just let us know. This is what happened. This is why we've chosen it. And we can go from there. And as I mentioned previously, vehicles identified for disposition through other FTA grants are not going to be eligible for disposition here. So please keep in mind that whatever vehicles you're submitting here, that it's not attached to any other project. Because remember, we don't want to use, you can't use the same vehicle to get 2 sources of revenue from 2 different grants. And then kind of the catch-all for all of the applications that we are receiving, depending on the number of applications received and the available funds, TxDOT reserves the right to focus on specific project types. So here are scheduled key dates and deadlines. The date for the application is going to be 2/14/2020. We will have those applications stored by 3/20/2020, and then we will begin negotiating after that particular point. We hope to have all negotiations wrapped up by 4/15/2020. We will have funding decisions made by 5/15/2020, and then we hope to have all PGAs executed and active in e-grants by 9/1/2020. So again, questions, if you have any questions, please email the inbox that I showed earlier, and it's on the screen now, by 5 p.m. Central Standard Time on January 3rd, 2020. To ensure a prompt response, make sure that the subject line is coordinated call question and then the specific question related topic. So if you have a question on the fleet replacement side of it, you would do coordinated call question for fleet replacement question, da-da-da-da-da. So please be sure to do that. We will be checking those inboxes thoroughly, but it's just one inbox and there's a whole bunch of us looking at it. So it would make it a lot easier if you just, if you're able to properly label the email so that we know what to check for. We will be uploading a Q&A to any questions that we receive, and it'll be at the particular URL attached. We will not be accepting any telephone inquiries, and do not contact your PTCs regarding questions for this call for projects. Thank you, and please, if you have any questions, let us know. Thanks.